And if people brought up people to think freely, you can't control them. Remember, on Saturday or Sunday, you have religion on the air, which is managed news. In a sane society, you would have everything different people believed in, different kinds of religion, non-religion, atheism, agnosticism. That's a democratic society. But when you just have one point of view on the radio, television, and on Sunday, just religion, that is not a free society. That's a thought-controlled society. We've never had a democracy. If you had a democracy, you'd have Republicans and Democrats able to talk to each other. As you know, they can't even talk to each other.
You mentioned something that makes me want to bring up sort of a devil's advocate point. In looking at some of the Venus Project naysayers, there was one person that had a problem with the idea that the society that the Venus Project would like to promote and create would have one single mindset. What are your thoughts on that?
Very good question, too. There's nothing the matter with being uniform if you're sanely uniform, meaning if all children were brought up not to want to kill one another, there would be nothing wrong with that. If all children were brought up to be creative and make creative suggestions to improve society, everybody being alike in that way wouldn't be bad. But when people think of being alike, they think of them as robots. And that's what I find today, that most people are very much alike. But there's very little individuality.
The values are really restricted in this culture to perpetuate this society. And if you were able to be an individual in this society and not just a cog in the wheel to get a job, you would have a lot of trouble.
I have a question I have to think how to form it, but I'll do it quickly here. So I'm studying in engineering, and it doesn't take long to fall in love with the metric system. All you have to do is work a few calculations that involve forces and mass, because the antiquated system didn't even have a mass unit, so they made up the slug, which is like a pound second squared per foot. It's really unusual. It's almost impossible. It ends up being very ineffective to try to continue to use anything but metric. But it's still hard to get, like, uncle that worked on small motors, small engine repair all his life. He will shun the metric system because it is the thing that caused him to have 2 sets of sockets in his toolbox to rifle through. So I can understand this change just being an aberration to your normal flow if it's viewed that way. But, I mean, if you had in one hand metric and you had in the other hand the English standard system, you have fractions, and as the denominator goes up, the size gets smaller. It really is confusing, as it's less direct than metric, and it doesn't deal with the base 10 system. You can't transfer units easily. But we still are the last ones to drop and go to the metric system. So if we can't even take up something that's clearly golden for us because of corporate interest or whatever, stagnation or just set in our ways, whatever the plan is, if we can't even take up something that we know will benefit all of us.
You understand that if the United States cannot see the future, other nations will pass us by. Do you understand that? The nation that can understand that the importance of electronics and computers and the training of engineers and scientists is a very important thing to do. If we fail to do that, just train people in business, advertising, commercialism, then you will become a have-not nation. It's those nations that train their citizens in engineering, basic science, and the methodology of solving problems will then be the nations that prevail in the future.
I think today they just announced that the colleges today are not looking for people with high IQs, as they call them. They're looking for people with money. That is the downfall of the culture.
There's an old spiritual quote that I can't remember off the top of my head, but it had to do with the fact that you could feed someone with a spoon, or you could stab their eyeball out with it, and that everything is a tool, and how you use it is what matters. With regard to technology, it seems to me anyway that technology is advancing at such a rapid pace in this technological revolution that we're in, but I think it's outpacing our societal spiritual development. And so a lot of what technology gets used for feeds the most banal of our desires. So we have implemented the ability to be able to interact with one another visually by having a television, and one of the ways that we chose to use television was for entertainment and phasing out real journalism. Now we see a lot of pseudo-reality based television, and then you have the internet, which is this brilliant virtual brain for all of us to be able to exchange information. And there are a lot of ways which that gets usurped for our baser interests. Even with the mobile phone technology that we have, there's a lot of texting among young people, or just anyone in general, about things that don't really matter that much. So how can we grow along with technology so that technology is actually serving better interests?
You can't do that until people lose their homes, lose their jobs, then they will wonder, hey, what's wrong with things? You have to wait till people lose confidence in the people they elected to political office. When they find out that they can't really handle problems, they don't know what to do about it, then they'll be looking for something new. These are the times and conditions where nations are breaking down. The monetary system is collapsing all over the world, and no system can freeze and hold that system forever. All systems continually undergo change. That's a realization that we have to come to. And they won't come to it until they are affected by it. Remember that people do not lead the world into new directions. Things collapse. People are abused. People lose their jobs. They're put in prison. Only when that happens to people, they realize that the system doesn't know how to handle problems.
This is why we feel it's so important at this time to get these ideas out there, because people don't know what to do. They have no other alternative. And this is a viable alternative for them to work towards. All those people who are disregarding this system, saying it's a scam or whatever else, will most likely be looking at it when they lose their jobs and their confidence in their leaders, and they lose their homes. Then they'll want something better. Everybody today wants a piece of the pie, and then when they start to lose that, then they look for something else.
Leanne asks, I see a comprehensive idea of how to end crime by removing the monetary system, but what of the crimes that would be committed for other reasons, such as there are murders and assaults and various other crimes committed by mentally ill individuals?
That are raised in the schools of the future are raised in problem solving, real problems that confront people. So they're raised in how to get along with people, how to disagree without getting angry, how to submit ideas rather than saying it'll never work. They'll learn a great deal about semantics and communication, so they will never say things like, it'll never work. They'll point out to what it is that doesn't work in it. They will learn how to solve problems and deal with one another. People will learn how to relate to one another, communicate with one another, and extend the lives of other people. They will learn how to make things better, not saying, have a nice weekend. Those are empty words. You don't control the weather. When you say to people, have a nice weekend, why don't you say, have a nice life? Why just a weekend? Because that's a custom of our society. It's old, has old language that has no meaning at all. Most of the words we use are really abstract. They don't have any positive meaning. All I can say is I wish you would come to our tours where you will meet with me and learn how to think this way. Because I spend a lot of time teaching people how to deal with problems.
Celene, you had a question regarding the Venus Project and the arts. Could you expand on that, please?
I'm just curious as to where the arts would fit into the Venus Project Society. You're talking about instruments being readily available so people can use them, but